Anyways, to get started, essentially, really all you got to do is just take your source tracks and route them to any bus. Right now, I actually had a bus set up on both guitar tracks. Have them be the same bus and have them route to an auxiliary track. Name that track, just, I don't know, simply delay 1, right? And what you can do in this track, this is kind of going to be your effect track. Insert mod delay, or something, some sort of basic delay from your actual session or just your DAW. I'm using mod delay because it's a free plugin and everybody should have it inside their Pro Tools session. And the important part about this is that since we're going to be doing some routing and some kind of advanced routing inside of Pro Tools, the mod delay should be set to 0% feedback. What that's going to do is that's essentially going to allow you to only get one repeat out of it, which is not really, doesn't make sense right now, but you'll kind of get it when I get through this. And what I did for this example was just set it to half notes. And then because Ryan John's awesome and showed me that cool stereo widening trick, I just offset the right side just by maybe like 100 milliseconds so that you kind of get this like stereo effect. So when you get to that point, essentially what you have is these guitars routed to one delay with one repeat. And get a sound. It sounds kind of like this. Oh, I got to route this actually. My bad.
You is bad.
Sorry. Here we go. So you get one repeat, right? So when you have an analog delay pedal, like Ryan said, the repeats tend to get darker over time. So how can we set that up inside of Tools to do that? Well, all you really have to do is route a delay into another delay that is also set to a single repeat. What that'll give you is 2 repeats, and it essentially divides up the repeats into their own tracks, and you can individually control those tracks. So to put that a little bit more into context, if we add or just simply right-click and duplicate this aux track, let's say we duplicate just the everything but the sends. Now we have another delay effect on another track, and all we have to do to get a second repeat out of this delay is to simply just add a send and have it send to this second one. We can rename this to what I'm going to call delay low pass, and then just route it to delay low pass. So when we have that set up, we have this delay already cloned, and what we'll get is actually 2 delays out of it.
Nice.
And of course I have to set this up. So you get 2 delays out of that,
nice.
Right?
That's cool.
So you're running delays into delays now. To complete this, I actually add a third one because I'm kind of crazy and I'm doing crazy stuff. And so I set it up so that I have 3 delays, so you get a nice kind of complete 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. I don't know, for some reason I think 3 repeats is a nice amount of delay. So set that up, add it, use it as delay 3. We'll do that right now. And then simply route it to, again, another bus. So set it up, insert a send, route it to a second. I'm going to call this delay low pass 2, just because I've already kind of set this up and kind of run through this a few times. and then just set the input. Of course, make sure that this is set up. So now what you have is you have 3 delays, and they're all individually set up. So you would get a sound just like the previous one, which is just a bunch of delays hitting each other.
Pretty cool. That's some really neat things going on.
Right. So you've got a lot of cool stuff going on. And so what this allows you to do is, like I said, we had a conversation about this last week about control and how, there's like a bunch of different ways to look at mixing audio, but there's a few different ways you can actually, there's one way specifically that we talk about, which is control. And splitting up tracks into their own, splitting up like a bass into a sub and a high, or splitting up like guitars into mid and sides, in the same way, we're splitting up and creating delays simultaneously so that we can control them. So what I do here is I actually will insert an EQ on this first one, actually all 3. So what I'll do is I'll essentially I'll select all of them and I'll insert a 7-band EQ. We can just use the simple Avid one. And on the first one, what I'll do is I'll just turn on the high pass and the low pass and just make the slopes crazy. And this will be maybe the bottom one, the actual high pass will be set to about 1,000. And the top end will be set to maybe 5,000. And then I'll go over here. I'll switch this so that the bottom is maybe like 700. And this is around 1,000. And then the bottom, the last one will be maybe like, and it'll be really low, maybe like 500. And it'll be, the top will be around like 700 or something, maybe 800. And then of course we'll have to turn these on and make all that stuff fancy. Do the same for this guy. So now what you have is essentially is 3 delays, and they taper off in their own way because they have different frequencies. We kind of shaved out the frequencies. So when you play it, you get this kind of cool tapering effect.
I like it. Very cool. And what's interesting about that is that when you do the bandpass, you've changed the tonality of the delay enough that it's different from the original source. So, not only have you reduced the level because you cut out tons of frequencies, but you can, bump up the send so you hit it a little harder. But since you the tonality of it so much, it should stand out reasonably well on top of the source versus just putting a delay there. At that point, you end up with just a delay, but the tonality of the delay is exactly the same as the source, so that it ends up getting masked pretty rough.
Yeah, it's really cool because then, exactly. So you get this, by doing that, you allow yourself to add something like another aux track and send these 3 tracks to a single aux track and control that. It's almost like you now have created this completely custom delay throw. You know what I mean? So
that is a total delay. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. And since this when you actually have these really short delays, when you have these delays that are really like one single delay at like a half note, you can actually do even more crazy stuff. Like, because it's so slow, the feedback takes a while to kind of, if it's really fast delays, this wouldn't work. But if you wanted to, you could take this last delay and route it back into the original delay. And then you get this crazy pad that happens. You know what I mean? So if you're to do this, set this so that it's maybe like at 0. When you play this, you actually, over time, it becomes a pad underneath the entire track. So if we play this, you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. And I can mute it and unmute it and show you what I'm talking about here. So when you play this, the delays will start to build up. It creates kind of a sonic character. And one last thing I like to do is actually pan the delays in. So I narrow out the pan so that the one that's really, really, really tight is mono. The one that's in the middle is more, a little bit more mono. And then of course the first one is completely stereo. So you get this like really cool tapering effect.
So not only does it kind of tonally get farther away, but it also kind of becomes more mono, which also means farther away.
Exactly. So you're completely making this depth thing happen. So let's take a listen. I'll unmute it and I'll mute it, and you can kind of hear what's happening here. I bumped up the sends a little bit just so that they're driving this a little harder, but I'll mute it if it gets crazy.
Sweet.
One thing that I was doing while I was dicking around with this, I was like, well, if I have this all worked out now, that means that I can put like saturation on these things, So like one thing I tried was throwing on the Decapitator, for instance, and they have some really cool guitar effects in here. This is another Sound Toys plugin that you guys should totally check out. Just cranking up the drive, and then bringing the level down a bit. And then you get like just delay on that last one. Let me turn that off for a second.
Just distortion on that last one.
Exactly. So at the very end, you get distortion just on the last delay. So you get this crazy like pad sound. And then, obviously it gets crazy and crazy and crazy and crazy and crazy.